And will you call the roll? And then would you call the roll, please?
I will. Heather King indicated she may be joining later. Bob Salinger. Ed Washington.
Here.
Jason Dumont.
Here.
Eric Molander. Tanny Stephenson.
Here.
Mary Helen Kincaid. Rochelle Altman. See your name, Rochelle.
Present.
Corky Collier.
Here.
Emerald Bogue.
Here.
Lori Stegman is at a conference. Ashton Simpson is out. Seth Reeser.
Here.
Dave Ritma. Eric Mueller.
Here.
Steve Fancher is out. Nancy Hendrickson.
Here. I am here. So does
There
that give
are
us
9 members present at this time.
Ooh.
Did you get Jason? I didn't hear you say Jason.
I did.
Okay.
All right, so then we have quorum, only just. So we are here with 9 members, and I hope you can see this. You can't. Anyway, we have 4 items to vote on today. So I'd just like to preface our meeting today with it is our last meeting of the fiscal year. We must adopt a budget, and we have 3 other items also in line with starting our new fiscal year as the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District on July 1st. And it was great to see those of you who could make it a few days ago for our celebration of this momentous moment. And it's time, the rubber's hitting the road. So we are here to get ready for the new fiscal year when we officially start up. All right, I see we have Eric Molander has joined and Mary Helen Kincaid has also joined. So we're up to 11, I believe. Okay, so everyone's got your packets and there has been some amendments come through. So our first order of business is the budget adoption. So we had a forecast and then we had, which we approved, we have a budget, which we approved, and then we went to the hearing and now it is time to adopt it and we must adopt it before July 1st. And welcome to Dave Ripma as well. So you have before you the budget adoption and the resolution, and we have 2 amendments that have been proposed. One amendment from Eric Molander was sent out last week, I think, or a few days ago. And there was another amendment sent out this morning by Seth Reeser. We can take them one at a time. Oh, and because we have 4 very important things to get to today, I'm going to be really watching the time. So there's issues people need to talk about. I'm just going to ask you to be brief and to the point as you can. And we'll be trying to meet all of our deadlines here. So thank you in advance for that. So with the let's see, I think I'm doing this right. So with a budget on the table and an amendment that we received last week, I think I'm going to ask if we can follow the order where we make an amendment, second it, and then we have our discussion. So does somebody want to have a motion on the first amendment from Eric Molander? I'll let you catch up. I know it's hard to find all this stuff in your email and your packets. So,
Nancy, I'm having trouble finding my raised hand. So,
okay, there you go. I'll look for that.
Okay, there you go. My question is, if these are very important, which I can't believe that no one doesn't believe that they are. Why are we only allotting 15 minutes to this?
So our budget adoption in the first, our first item is 40 minutes long.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, well, I thought that would include, okay, so if that's just discussion, I'm fine. But the other ones look like 15 minutes, but
Yeah.
anyway, I'll be quiet.
Okay, and this works too. I'll if I don't see your hand, somebody else will let me know. But that works because I know the electronic hand can be a pain.
Okay, so Mary Helen, are you moving the amendment that is for the Penn 2 funds?
Yes. So I don't have a wording, but I make a motion that we accept the amendment submitted by Eric Molander in regards to Penn 2 funding. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And then
That
I'll
works.
second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a motion for this amendment on the table, and it's seconded. Is there any discussion?
Would it be possible for Wendy to put the motion, or I mean, the amendment that Eric had sent, the wording up on the screen?
And while you're figuring that out,
I can do that.
that'd be great. Eric has his hand up.
So this is, in essence, a clarification of the use of Penn 2 funds that I've worked with Allison and the staff on sculpting. The purpose of this is to have the funds be subjected to an additional clarification that they be used for projects and not for operating expenses. So this will ensure that we have adequate funding for the 13th Avenue outflow project and other projects associated with Penn 2.
So, Madam Chair, would it be correct to assume that the motion that was made is to accept the text that's up on the screen?
Yes, that the proposed text would replace the original text. I see Corky's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. My question really is for Lori, I think. Does this create any difficulties for you?
If I may, I'll jump in. Staff is prepared to accept the board's direction on this. We can make this work. It doesn't change the balance. It doesn't require additional TSCC work. I guess the only offering I would make, and again, it's just really a board decision, and I appreciate that Mr. Molander reached out to staff and we were able to help clarify what his intents were. And I think we've got that pretty well articulated, is that historically, in any case, each board has reserved carryover funds to service operating costs for the first 6 months of the year. This is a little bit of a change in philosophy, but there's also a lot of other changes going on. And so it's certainly within the board's right to make this amendment.
And so I guess, thank you for that clarification, Jim. I feel like I heard last time, and I don't want to put words in Lori's mouth, but I did hear that this was an extra accounting piece. I don't know if that's what you were asking for, Corky.
Yeah, there's a little bit of accounting and administrative work that we would need to do to track the money, but it's certainly doable, not significant, a little bit.
Okay, Emerald.
I understand that this is a doable policy choice that the board could give direction on. I want to better understand the implications of accepting the amendment as it relates to the need for funds for operating.
I think really it just obligates those funds specifically to Penn 2 projects, shifts some of those operating costs to the other parts of the district. It does require some administrative tracking for a little bit longer period of time because Penn 2's funds would remain longer than they would under the staff proposal, which would have used the funds for both ongoing operations costs consistent with past practice and with the capital program that's currently approved for the former Penn 2. I think the other thing that it potentially does, but again, it's a relatively small impact because I think we're talking about less than $500,000. I don't have it memorized, Eric's 400 and something thousand. That it does potentially cause a little bit longer period of time for the board to use carryover funds for reserves. But again, it's a relatively small amount of money under the overall scheme that we're operating under.
Thank you.
And Eric, if I've said something wrong, I don't mean to.
No,
to jump in.
I think that we're correctly characterizing it in the sense that this to be used for project money. The budget has adequate funding coming from assessments. So since, as Jim has said, it was to be used for working capital purposes, and we have adequate working capital, Penn 2 will continue to contribute the appropriate amount to the operating expense budget.
Okay. And then we have Eric Mueller, followed by Rochelle, followed by Corky.
Yeah, just quickly, Eric, I'm just wanting to understand what how this amendment benefits. I'm trying to understand what we're trying to help accomplish.
What this does is it assures the landholders in Penn 2 that the funds that are carried forward from their assessments that have been used for reserves and for capital projects will continue to be used and reserved for capital projects within the historic boundary of Penn 2.
Okay, Rochelle.
Thanks. Yes, I'm just with the eye of we're moving into one unified district. I guess I don't know if I'm missing something, but struggling to understand why we would have one of the 4 districts take a certain approach with regard to their funds being brought into the new district, going into kind of a designated fund reserve for them, and not having the other districts do the same, legacy districts. So I would be curious to hear if there's a particular justification for taking a unique approach with one of the 4 districts.
Rochelle, I'll respond to that. In this instance, first it was Penn 2 that took the initiative to ensure that funds, as staff has outlined, that are designated for use only in Penn 2 go forward. So it is not unique. Penn 1's carryover will be used in Penn 1. SDICs will be used in SDIC. So that's the purpose of the segregated bank account and staff's original orientation to use it just in those legacy districts.
So actually, could I have a point of clarification there from staff, Jim, regarding, so what I'm hearing is it's all the same thing. So now I'm confused as to why we have an amendment.
I believe
explain?
we had discussed with the board at the request of SDIC and Penn 2 segregating carryover funds for use in those historic districts when we started up the new district. We had originally discussed that in the context of identified capital projects and then the ongoing typical first 6 months or so operating costs that we would use the money carrying over for both those purposes. I believe Mr. Molander would appreciate the board approving an additional amendment that would further restrict the Penn 2 funds solely for projects, not for operating. And so that's the distinguishing feature that this amendment would create.
And just to be clear, we're not doing that in the other legacy districts.
We've not
No,
been
just
asked
to be
to
clear,
do that.
you are doing it in the other legacy districts.
Well, we're reserving SDIC funds for both operating and projects. The amendment Mr. Molander is proposing would further restrict the Penn 2 to just projects. But the other legacy board carryovers, with the exception of MCDD, are being held for use in those districts.
Okay. Then we have Corky, Mary Helen, and Michelle.
Sure. Just a quick comment, because this, if I understand this correctly, I mean, this really goes back to conversations, deep conversations we had, oh, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. And I think it's rooted in the fact that, you know, when you're starting to deal with somebody's money, you know, the questions can get a little more pointed, understandably so. So we spent a lot of time years back trying to set up processes to assure ratepayers that their money wasn't going to be shifted over to another district that perhaps hadn't done as good of a job at managing their budgets, you know, that sort of thing. So there were very valid concerns, and I think a lot of recommendations that came out of that, and a lot of people involved. This wasn't just a few people
Alert from
raising
calendar.
an issue.
Molander, Eric, John.
So
Thanks, Eric.
thanks. So really, I think I support this. If we want to make this the same for all the districts, fine, go for it. There's no problem there at all, I don't think. But it really does get to the heart of assuring people that we're spending their money appropriately. Whether you agree with their concerns or not really kind of doesn't matter. They have concerns, so let's make sure we take care of that. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, Mary Helen.
I just want to build on what Corky said. I heard many complaints about not trusting because they weren't able to discuss the budget. And there's testimony with the TSCC to that effect. I really want to support because I represent landowners, and those are the number one concern I had, was that the projects that they had paid money for get paid for. And the difference in, Jim said, capital and operating, and their money was not paid in terms of operating costs for the new flood district because they didn't even know what it was. So I would urge, if other districts want to do that, SDIC and Penn 2 are the only districts bringing cash into the district. Penn 2 has a emergency allocation. Penn 1 has emergency allocation of the city of Portland to pay their debt, and they don't have reserves, to my knowledge, unless they got some in the last month. And MCDD is bringing debt, but debt is more, if I'm misstating this, please correct me, but I'm not an accountant, so I can't speak to all the fancy language, but they're bringing more debt than they are revenue. So this is to protect the Penn 2 landowners to get what they have already paid for and assure them that that will happen.
Okay, so I see a couple of things in the chat. One of them is a reminder that MCD is actually bringing the most cash to the table. Emerald is noting that the time is moving on, and we're only on the amendment. We haven't got to the budget adoption yet. So, Lori, I think I'm gonna, if you have a clarification, that
I
would be
do have a
helpful.
clarification.
Okay,
Yeah.
other than that, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is just to what Corky said. If we were to move to restricting funds in all 4 legacy districts, I would not have cash to operate. Because the cash coming in from MCDD is what we will use to operate for the first 6 months. And if I can't use that cash across the district, then I can't do maintenance in the other 3 districts. So I just wanted to clarify that we can't restrict the MCDD cash, or I will need to come back to you relatively quickly to do a credit line to be able to operate in the first 6 months.
Thank you for that clarification. So we have a motion on the table. I think we've had some questions and heard about it. I think I'm going to call for a vote, and this one should be a roll call vote, not a voice vote. So, Wendy, can you proceed?
So the question is on the motion to accept the amendment that Eric Molander proposed as written in the packet. And Ed Washington. Sorry, Ed. I will unmute you. Okay, I will come back to you, Ed, and start at the top of our list. Eric Mueller.
Aye.
Dave Ritma.
Yes.
Seth Reeser.
Yes.
Emerald Bogue.
No.
Corky Collier.
Yes.
Rochelle Altman.
No.
Mary Helen Kincaid.
Yes.
Tanny Stephenson.
Yes.
Eric Molander.
Yes.
Jason Dumont.
No.
Ed Washington.
No.
There are 7 yes votes.
Oh, and do I get to vote?
Oh, sorry, Nancy, you get to vote last. Sorry.
Okay. I'm
I
also gonna vote.
apologize.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know that I should be voting last as chair, so I appreciate that. I'm also gonna vote no. So the motion does not carry. You said 7 votes
That's correct.
and we need 9?
Correct.
Okay.
Point of order here.
Mhm.
How many do we have available today to vote?
There are currently 12 board members present.
Okay, and so a majority of the board members present voted in favor of this amendment?
That,
Our
that's
rules
correct.
require-
And
That is correct. And
Yeah.
so
state,
why is a supermajority required for this?
It's in the
Yeah.
bylaws and is.
no,
Okay,
it's
I
not
don't
the
think it
bylaws. It's
is.
the state attorney general's ruling on quorum. So a quorum of the entire board is needed to adopt any, to take any action.
That's how
And
we vote.
Allison-
We have quorum.
Well, hang on. Point of order. I'm gonna have Allison explain this to us because she's the expert.
Yeah, I believe that the bylaws, I think I looked into this before. I believe that the bylaws call for a majority of all members, but I'm trying to pull up the bylaws. If you've got them handy, Wendy, can you post that?
That was how it has
Yeah,
been explained
it's
to me during
true.
my tenure. And it has caused me some concern as well, Eric, but
Then can you also explain how we could get a quorum on anything if, well, I'm sorry, how we could get a quorum when other board members aren't present to vote?
well, you just need.
We
nine-
have a quorum. We have a
quorum.
quorum. A quorum is one more than half. And under state law and under our bylaws, you have to have a majority of the members, not the majority of members present. So if you have only a bare quorum, bare minimum, you will have to have more of those voting in favor of a motion than
so
just 51%.
Let's just say I wasn't able to attend, but I wanted to vote. So do we have a clause for proxy?
Well,
votes?
that's a different question.
Okay,
We're not
sorry.
dealing with proxies
Yeah,
today.
so let's get the bylaws up, Wendy.
I have them. I'm just trying to find the relevant section. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to be really clear on this.
Yeah,
I- and
appreciate
I-
the discussion.
It has come up before, and I do recall that we need 9 votes on everything to pass it. So that means if we only had 9 people here, everything would have to be unanimous. This is my remembrance.
Correct.
But please, if you can find the notation so that we all feel comfortable having this verified, that would be a good use of time. Thank you.
I will acknowledge this is not super satisfactory, but the state budget law does allow this board to make a change of this nature after adoption as well. So you do have further opportunity to amend the budget. Depending on how significant the amendments are, you have different processes you have to follow. But if the board wants to further direct changes, you retain that ability going forward. I recognize it's not the same, and we do need to clarify the bylaws. Wendy, thank you for looking.
Yeah, Wendy, it looks like it's section 8.
Yes, thank you. You're more speedy than I am. Here we go. So section 8, voting and quorum, 8.2, minimum vote requirement. Any action or decision requires a vote of a majority of the total board membership, not including any vacancies. When only a quorum of the board membership is present, the vote must be in unanimity. And this is the process we've followed since the beginning. And it is a reflection of state law or state attorney general, a guidance on quorums.
Thank you for looking that up. So that seems very clear. Eric, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just was going to touch on what Jim had commented about. The local budget law does allow, after adoption, after July 1, during the fiscal year period, does allow the board to make changes to the budget. So, you know, at the July meeting, you know, if we have a larger group, you know, Eric could certainly explain this this budget amendment again, and the board could choose potentially to vote a different way. So it's not like this is the last forever and always, amen.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. And to that point, Seth, for your amendment, which we got this morning, I'm wondering if, so there was, I looked through it as I'm sure we all did or tried to. I'm wondering if that amendment might be better offered in July when we so we have more time to digest it and talk about the pros and cons and you know, what are the risks if we accept that. So how do you feel about that?
I just want to clarify. So I do have some comments, but I want to make sure that we've moved on from the discussion about the currently opposed amendment before doing that. Are we closing the discussion on the amendment by Eric Molander?
Well, the vote was taken, so the discussion is closed, but
Okay.
I do see Mary Helen's hand up, so if you want to offer her a moment. Mary
No,
Helen,
it's
is
fine. No,
okay. All right.
I just want to address
Okay.
the time that we need to discuss these things that we've not been given. So that's my concern.
Yeah.
Okay. So Seth.
So Nancy, I can offer. I'm fine if we postpone that. I do have a question that I'd like clarification on.
Great.
Because some of my concerns are this would essentially fulfills the third charge under ORS 50 for the temporary board, which is setting the first year budget and the operating revenue requirements. I believe some of my concerns are that we've put too much room in and that money might be grabbed at a later date for purposes for which the board doesn't intend. And I'm not sure if we take action after the budget's adopted, whether or not that would affect the amount that is able to be raised from both the flood safety intergovernmental fee and the property assessments. So I'd like clarification on that before offering to table.
So
Right.
I'll clarify that, yes, there's time after the first of the fiscal year to act on budget amendments, to the extent that some operating funds have been tapped into by the districts, because remember, they're still segregated. That's fixed for Penn 2 and I believe Penn 1. But
so let me clarify.
The current budget provides for it to be used for capital or operating expenses within the boundaries of the former district. Without an amendment, that will stay. And to the extent there's some money being used for operating expenses before a new vote.
He's talking more broadly, Allison, not on the previous amendment. Is that
Oh,
correct?
I apologize. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Seth, then.
And I can clarify. So when we set the flood safety intergovernmental fee at 6.2 million, there's restrictions within ORS 550 on how much that can grow. And so the question is if we adopt the budget at $6.2 million and then decide later that we want to reduce that, would that actually be able to be reduced in terms of the cap on those expenditures going forward? Because my understanding was it's the year one and then the year one adopted budget and then the cap increases based off of that. So I don't know that a supplemental budget later on would modify that limit.
Jim, your hand is
So
up.
my understanding, Seth, is that you would definitely set the baseline number, but you reference in your proposed amendment, the 3% is a minimum increase every year. And the board still has to take a proactive step of adopting that 3%. The ceiling is the CPI. So you cannot go above the CPI. You still have to proactively vote to do any increase. And it is my understanding the board retains the right to reduce rates should it have the fiscal capability to do that. We're not taking that away. You don't have to take the money.
You know, but the ceiling's calculated based either on inflation or 3%, calculated off the 6.2 number. If we then reduce the budget to 5.2 in that or 5.7, then that upper cap applies based off of the adopted budget and not the reduced or whatever is adopted by the board. That cap is fixed once the year one budget is
The board
adopted.
would retain the authority to use that cap. It could also reduce it if it chose.
So you're saying that a future board could reduce the legal cap on what that was?
No, the legal board could choose not to accept or proffer increases in either the flood safety benefit fee or the assessments. The maximum they can do if inflation is below 3% is 3%, and they have to vote to do it. The cap would be CPI in any given year, and they'd have to vote to do it. If they don't vote to raise either of those fees, they're not raised.
So that does, to me, sound like something for a future board. Lori.
Can I just note,
Your hand
please,
is
for the
up.
board, that you are being asked to adopt the budget appropriations, which is the spending side. The state doesn't care about the revenue. They only care about the revenue until they see that your budget is balanced. If the board chooses to change the revenue structure after we've adopted the budget appropriations, but prior to the point that I've actually done billing, the board can do that. What you're being asked today to adopt is the spending. You're not being asked to adopt the ending fund balances or how those are restricted. You're not being asked to adopt revenue. If you look at the resolution, it goes through the spending for each fund, and it does define the assessment amount, and it does define the property tax amount for the GO bond.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
So then it sounds like if staff is telling us that this decision can be put off until after adoption and we still retain the authority under ORS 550 of fixing that first year flood insurance or flood safety intergovernmental fee, and that can be reduced going forward from the temporary board, then I'm fine tabling the amendment to July or August or when it can be brought back after there's enough time.
So Allison or Jim, is Seth's understanding correct?
I believe it is. Allison and Lori, any commentary?
We're set to do the first billing on the intergovernmental fee in September. So if the board wanted to make a change to the intergovernmental fee, it would be prudent for them to do so prior to that first billing.
And you might need to adjust your spend as a result, as part of a budget amendment.
You can always spend less than budget. So if you choose to direct staff to spend less, we don't have to change the budget. Staff will just do what you ask us to do.
So that sounded
Like
Seth.
an affirmative.
Okay, all right.
So I would be fine not introducing the amendment at this point, provided that we address it at a meeting in July or August.
Yeah, let's please put it on the July.
Let's do July.
Let's do it on July, so we have a time to look at it and get extra analyses done in terms of impacts and risks. Eric, did you have a
That was essentially what I was going to ask, is that we could get it out in the packet in advance, and that, you know, staff give us whatever background or other questions that might be there as a result of it. I had a chance to read it briefly, and I think there's a lot of interesting information in there, some of which is related to the current year and some of which has kind of farther, you know, out year implications. And I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice to try and address it today. So I appreciate that Seth is willing to have us have it at a future meeting. I think we need to deliberately put it on the agenda, have it scheduled for a chunk of time and all of that, so it can be addressed as a board topic. So thank you.
Yeah, 100% in agreement with that. Okay, thank you, Seth, for bringing it up and also agreeing to do it at the next meeting. I will note that we have 1 minute to stay on time, so I will take a resolution on the budget, please. Budget adoption, Eric?
Madam Chair, I would move adoption of resolution 2024-0607. A resolution adopting the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget, making appropriation and levying taxes. And I believe it's page 3 of the packet.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Emerald. Is there discussion? Okay. Oh, Eric, you're muted.
As the maker of the motion, I would just say that we dealt with the forecast many months ago. We had the couple of budget committee meetings. We, as a budget committee, approved the budget. We had the TSCC hearing. So, I mean, I think we've had an opportunity to have it before us frequently, and it's the hour is near. We need to make sure we accomplish this today, and so I'm supportive of going forward with it, and as it's in the packet.
Thank you, Eric. Any other discussion? We're still on time. Wendy, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Eric Mueller,
Aye.
Dave Ripma,
Yes.
Seth Reeser,
Yes.
Emerald Bogue,
Yes.
Corky Collier,
Aye.
Rochelle Altman,
Yes.
Mary Helen Kincaid,
Because I don't feel like I've understood all the processes that Eric says that he understood. We were only given 7 days to go over the final package of this resolution. And I don't think that I could vote responsibly on behalf of the citizens that I represent. So I therefore abstain.
Penny Stephenson,
Aye.
Eric Molander,
Aye.
Jason Dumont,
Aye.
Ed Washington,
Aye.
Nancy Hendrickson.
I also vote aye. The motion passes.
There are 11 ayes.
So, and we needed 9. So congratulations, we have adopted a budget. There is a lot of work to go forward, as members have brought up, and as we have affirmed that we will go through. The devil is always in the details. So I look forward to an interesting July meeting. And thank you, everybody. We are on time, and we have 3 more things. So these are all very important, but probably less discussion needed. So this first one for the debt issuance is a 15-minute item. And do we have a presentation today, or is this?
We do not, but
Okay.
I will just say a few words. So we have 2 forms of debt that we are going to issue for the GEO bond. We have $15 million worth of debt from the state of Oregon. That is not being voted on today because the state is still pulling together the financing agreement. That program is on a reimbursement basis, which is weird for debt. So I want to point that out to all of our board members. The state will not give us our borrowing until we've actually paid an invoice, submit for reimbursement, and then wait 90 days to be paid back. So that brings some cash flow challenges to our GO bond fund. So we are also, in addition to that $15 million of authorized debt that's being treated like a grant from the state, looking to a bank borrowing to formalize our first tranche of debt. That bank borrowing will be taxable, which doesn't mean a lot to many people in this room, but gives us some flexibility. One of the things that it provides for us is that we can invest that money when we're not spending it and earn more dollars that can be used for the capital program. That is the debt that we're looking at today. The financial advisors have run the numbers and made estimates. I told them I did not want to go over $0.015 per thousand for this first year of debt for our taxpayers. So the payback that's included in the budget has their calculations based upon their experience on interest rates and offerings right now, their experience with new entities like us, and they've added a conservative amount to that as well. So they don't want to tell me a number that is going to end up not being, that is going to cause us to be short on funds. If when we go to the banks that the interest rate has risen, we will reduce the amount that we're borrowing so that we can stay within what we have put in the budget for the GO bond to be able to pay the first year worth of debt service. So what I'm asking for you today is a maximum amount of borrowing. But as the financial advisors start to work with the banks and get a feel for the market for our entity, that could change. We have a great team of financial advisors that are working with the banks right now and starting to pull together a package to be able to send out to the banks so that they can give us bids. I can't move forward with that bid process until the board has authorized me to issue this debt. If I don't have the authorization, then we can't go to the banks and start to see what those numbers look like. So today, the resolution that is there is to allow us to proceed to get that information from the banks and make a decision on moving forward with issuing the debt. The resolution itself was written by our bond counsel. So it's pretty standardized language that they use, but I did want to make sure that you were aware that that resolution was written by bond counsel. And with that, I can take questions.
Thanks for providing that summary. Much appreciated. We have been talking about issuing debt, and it sounds like this is another one of those time-sensitive things. We need to move forward so we can start doing our work with a minimum of waiting.
That's correct. What we're looking at right now, if we can get the authorization today, the financial advisors are ready to pull the packet together to get bids from the banks. And we would be able to look to getting that cash available for us to meet our spending requirements by the end of September. So if we have a delay on this approval, that obviously is going to delay the cash flow, and we'll have to look at the GO bond project and push things out because we can't start spending until we have these funds.
Okay, thank you. So I see 3 hands up, and actually, if we're going to have discussion on this, I'd really like it to be on the table. Can we do a motion and a second first, and then, and if there is a second, have the discussion?
My question's just about what words that Lori used, so I don't know where it would fit in properly. She asked for questions, and I had questions about her presentation.
Okay. Well, we can do it this way too. Okay, Mary
No,
Helen,
I
go.
think Nancy,
What?
I think you're right. I think we should do it properly. We'll have a motion and then there's discussion.
Okay, so okay, so Eric Mueller definitely wants to make a motion. I see that look, so go ahead.
Madam Chair, I would move adoption of resolution 2024-0608, a resolution authorizing the sale of a general obligation bond and related matters. And it's page 169 in the packet.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, Mary Helen, I'm going to take you first because you had your hand up first, and then Eric Molander, and followed by Seth Reeser.
Thank you. Somebody took my hand down. My question was for a definition of the words. I'm very knowledgeable about reimbursement grants from the state because of nonprofits, and you have to have match to get that money. So you have to have money. So I understand that process, but you referred to the IFA as a loan and then as a grant. Which is it?
It's a loan, but when they're giving the money, they're treating it like a grant. So I have to prove that I have authorized spending and that I've actually paid those invoices before they'll give me my borrowing, which is kind of backwards, which is
Yeah.
why I mentioned it. Normally, when you borrow money, you get the full amount that you're borrowing, and then you have those dollars available to pay the invoices. But the way this program works with the state, they do borrowing to support our borrowing, but then they hang on to the money until we've
Okay.
actually paid for an invoice, and then they pay us back. So we will, in the end, have to pay, the taxpayers will pay the state back for that borrowing, but they create this kind of interesting situation with cash flow because they don't give you your cash until you've spent the cash. So it's just kind of a unique program, which is why I mentioned it, but it is not a grant. But when you're looking at the flow of funds, it works very similar to what a grant program works.
Except I don't have to pay interest on the money. they
Except
give
for
me.
you don't have to pay it back when you get a grant. And so this is just creating a kind of interesting cash flow issue.
Thanks for that. Eric Molander.
So I'll unmute myself. Lord, what is, let's begin with the IFA. What is the interest rate that we will be charged by the state on that?
We haven't received the documents yet, and we're not voting on that, so I don't know. There
All right,
were
so I'll
going to
switch
be
over
two
to the other
pieces
one.
of it. There was going to be a low interest piece and a zero interest piece, but I don't know where they landed as far as the mix, so I don't have that information today.
Okay, and then let's switch to the bank borrowing. First of all, what is the interest rate that we'll pay on it?
I don't know what we'll pay until we get the bids from the banks, but the assumption that the financial advisors have used in the calculations is 6.5%, which they hope to be conservative. So we're hoping we'll get a lower rate than that.
Okay, and so what is the term of the loan?
20 years.
And you said that this is the taxable portion. So
this piece we're issuing as taxable because we're looking at real estate transactions in this first tranche, and a portion of those real estate transactions are not eligible for tax exempt debt. And my other motivation here, because of this whole cash flow management that I'm doing, is to be able to have some interest earnings on this debt and not have to be concerned about arbitrage, because I don't think we'll meet the spend down requirements. And so the most prudent approach is to issue taxable debt so that you don't have to worry about having to pay the federal government back for arbitrage.
Okay, and I understand the arbitrage. And do you have terms and conditions yet on this?
No, because it works a little bit different than it does in a private business. In order for me to move forward and get those terms and conditions and get the bids from the banks, I have to have authorization from the board to be able to move forward. I can't start getting those details until the board has given me authorization to proceed. So then our financial advisors will go take our information out for bid from the banks, and we'll be able to determine the terms at that point. And the financial advisors then will provide a recommendation on which proposal is most beneficial for our taxpayers.
And
so I'm going to say a point of order here.
When do we get to vote on the actual instrument? Is that
You
to-
don't. This is the authorization of the issuance.
or-
We'll come back and share where we landed with it, but this is the authorization for the issuance.
So you're asking me to authorize a debt payment without even knowing the interest rate, the terms, or the terms and conditions?
That's
Isn't
correct.
that sort of like saying to your real estate agent, go out and find me a mortgage and I'll pay whatever you come up with?
So, point of order here, just a moment. What I've been hearing from Lori, our staff consistently, is that in order to find out all this information, we as a board need to authorize the debt, and then all that will be found out. I also want to note that we have this, I'm looking at our time again, and I see Seth has his hand up. So, so Eric, it sounds like you got your questions answered, although it wasn't the answer. I mean, the answer is that there's no information yet. Can we move to Seth and then come back to you if you have your hand up again? Thank you. Go ahead, Seth.
Just to clarify, so this is falls under the GEO bond authorized debt and will be paid back
Yes.
with property taxes.
That's correct. And year one was the payback was in the budget that you just adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Eric and then Corky.
So again, I just want to be very clear about what we're authorizing. What we're authorizing today is for you to do an RFP to get proposals, but you will come back to us for the actual authorization to accept the proposal from the bank. Is that correct?
No, you're authorizing the issuance of the debt.
Without knowing any of those details.
That's correct.
And this is standard in public service. We do
yeah.
hope that our staff get the best deal, and that's why we hire good staff and good counsel. Lori mentioned that she's working with professionals on this. Corky.
And again, we took the advice of bond counsel on the resolution, and you guys may amend it.
Thanks, Jim. Corky.
Well, I'll take the advice of my dad in my 4 generations of banking in the family of like, no, you don't sign anything until you know the numbers. I mean, I'm sure it's standard in public policy, and I don't expect any problem whatsoever. I think Lori's laid out a good pathway forward, but my question is, what's the problem with simply coming back to the board and saying, here are the numbers we got, everybody all in favor, and off we go?
What I heard, and I'll let Jim answer that, but what I heard when Eric asked that question was she can't get numbers until we authorize or move forward.
Well, somebody's got to sign it.
I think
The
it's
final
fine.
approval. So
It's fine for the board to do that. We relied on the work of bond counsel who provides these resolutions for local governments all across the region. You guys may do something different. I just want
but
to.
my question is, does that create a problem?
I think it creates a timing issue potentially and quorum issues and things like that. And when we get the lowest bid, we're going to approve the lowest bid. So I guess what I would say is there's really not a lot of decision space for the board because we're going to take the best offer we can get. And if you don't think we're going to do that, then we have a different problem that you guys need to be working on. So it's totally your right to do that. It's okay if you want to. It's just inconsistent with how other people do it and the advice we got, but it's okay. It just slows things down. That's all.
Well, and we have a professional financing firm that is doing the bid process and advising on the lowest cost to the taxpayer. So if we believe that we haven't hired the right firm, then that's another question as well.
Don't go there, please. That's not I don't think what anybody is implying.
You're asking if there's a problem. We're sharing with you how we got here, Corky. And again, the problem is we've got really great experts doing this. If you guys want to step in between the experts and your staff, you're welcome to do that. It's okay. It just takes scheduling a meeting and having that conversation, and it's atypical, but it's okay. And I'm not trying to be defensive, but you asked a question, we're trying to answer it. I'm sorry I'm not giving you the answer you want to hear.
So
May I make
Allison,
a point of
please.
order, clarify? In all the many 20 some bond measures that I have been involved with, this is standard operating procedure for public issuance. The board referred the bond, the voters passed it, and this is really it's not a nothing step, but it's an administrative step to implement what you already referred and what the voters approved. And because some of what we're doing is taxable issuance and we're getting that through a bank, we are required to get the lowest rate. So if we are given a low rate and we say, well, now we've got to go back and get confirmation of that, we may not be able to schedule that meeting while that rate is held. We all know about how long we get rates held. And I trying to imagine what the discussion would be. If the discussion was, wow, it's such a high rate, we'd say, well, yeah, interest rates changed because of X factors in the world from what we had hoped, but this is the lowest we can get right now. And so I can't really imagine what more could be said.
Thanks.
Unlike when you're buying a house or something, this is something that we are issuing this debt at the best interest rate we can.
And that was in the GEO bond. I
That's
recall
right.
that was some of the text. So we are approaching time on this. Mary Helen, I see you have your hand up. And then I'm going to say, if there is an amendment, we can hear it. Otherwise, I'm going to call for a vote. Mary Helen.
Okay. I was asked not to disclose his name, but he was one of the neighbors who submitted testimony to TSTC. I asked him about these resolutions because I'm not a budget analyst and I'm not able to look at the things the way many of our members are and question them. I like Corky's analysis of keeping track of your money. I don't even remember what it was, but whatever your father had said. He took a look at the resolution and he said, they can't ask you to vote on something you don't know the terms of. And that's a federal budget analyst. And I know it's not nonprofits, it's not bond, it's not an estimation of who we use, all of those things. So it's a different opinion. People are shaking their heads. So I just wanted to offer that as another voice of people that could evaluate what we're doing. I have no question about your efforts to find the best possible rate, none of those things, but being able to say, go out and get the money and spend it however you want. I don't know how I would explain that to normal everyday citizens that are trying to explain why I'm voting to do something like that.
All right, and just to clarify, it's not like that. It's for the bond measure it's not for anything you want. It's for the purposes set forth in the bond measure that the voters passed. So I think that's the situation we have here, not personal stuff, not federal taxes. It's a local bond measure that this board referred and that the citizens passed. And now we're implementing it. We're going to go through this again when we issue debt, when we issue the bonds. We will be on the market for the best interest rate that the bond market can give us.
Okay, and I see in the chat, one board member has asked us to proceed with the vote. Corky, do you have an amendment or
yes, I would
quick
suggest
question?
I would suggest a quick amendment of either that we agree to, and we can do it right now. Lori could give us her expected range of interest rates, and we can approve a range of interest rates. I don't believe that's in there right now. I might be mistaken. And move forward with that, and then she can move forward with getting the loan if it's within that range. That way, this board we're supposed to be the final approval, right? Or call a quick emergency session once she's got a loan about to be agreed upon. Call a quick board meeting and get a thumbs up on it. My amendment would be one of those two.
Okay, do you have text of an amendment that you can offer?
No, I do not.
Okay, so I think when you said the last thing, Lori can't get numbers. The staff can't get numbers until we authorize. We must authorize.
No, that's not
So-
what I was implying is Lori has a pretty good idea what the rate's going to be right now, I suspect. She's that good. I have full confidence that she has a pretty good idea. She could probably give us a range right now and say, I fully expect it to be within X and Y. We can approve that now, and if it falls outside of that range, then we come back to the board and discuss it further.
Is there a number at which the lowest rate we can get is too high for this board so that you would stop the construction process? I think that's the question you need to ask yourselves.
So, okay, I understand the, we have had a lot of discussion. It sounds like people are where they are. Is there an amendment to offer, or we can also vote on what's on the table?
Nancy, I would like it if we could move to vote, please. Corky, I appreciate your desire to find a path that feels agreeable to people. I usually like that too. I think the obvious conclusion is to move forward and find the lowest possible rate. And I trust staff to do that. So I would like us to move forward, and folks should vote their conscience.
Okay, so I don't have an amendment. I have two members asking to move to the vote. Let's go ahead and call the vote. Wendy?
Eric Mueller,
Aye.
Dave Ripma,
Yes.
Seth Reeser,
Yes.
Emerald Bogue,
Yes.
Corky Collier,
No.
Rochelle Altman,
Yes.
Mary Helen Kincaid,
No.
Hanny Stephenson,
No.
Eric Molander,
On advice of my legal counsel, who considers this a breach of fiduciary responsibility, I vote no.
Jason Dumont,
Aye.
Ed Washington,
Aye. Aye.
Nancy Hendrickson.
Aye.
There are 8 yeses.
Okay, so the motion does not pass. So let me know, Jim, does this mean, what is the timing? Can we consider this in July, or do we need to hold another meeting in June?
What this does is it delays our ability to move forward with the capital program until you guys authorize the issuance of debt that 70% of the voters have approved. Is there a percent interest rate that this board feels is too high? That would be my suggestion to you. And if we go to the banks and we come back and the lowest rate we can get is above a rate that you guys are uncomfortable with, we could bring it to you. We can't predict what the rate's going to be, Corky. We really don't know. It's rather fluid out there. I appreciate your sense that we might know, but we really don't. And that's why we have the financial advisors. But I appreciate the intent that Eric and Mary Helen and others are raising. I understand it. I guess I want to assure you, we're going to work with these financial advisors and get the lowest cost debt we can. Happy to inform you about that. And I'm happy to submit the staff and the acceptance of that debt to being beneath a certain rate. But I just can't tell you what it's going to be yet because we're a new entity and so on. So I understand your desire to have that control. I applaud it. I think we're going to deliver that to you. And I think we're going to take the lowest possible rate. So again, Corky, I like where you're headed. I think if there is a number that's too high, given all your expertise and what the rates may be, that might be a good way to try and reconsider this vote. But it may not be either. That's the best I've got in this moment. Thank you for hearing me.
Okay, so I see some hands up. I think at this moment, we could do an amendment if someone had an amendment, or we need to move on. I don't see someone could also ask us to hold the vote again. but I don't think there's time for a lot of discussion on this. But Seth, Mary Helen, Eric, that's the order. Do you have either an amendment or desire to hold the vote again?
If Corky's amenable, I think establishing a rate of 7.5% as the upper limit and adding that as coming back, I'd like to offer that amendment if we can. That's what it takes to get it approved.
Okay, so amendment on the table. And the same resolution, I think this is the same resolution, but with an upper limit of 7.5%.
Seth, did I hear that correctly, that we would come back if the offering was above that and get approval to go above that? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Could I ask a process clarification from Allison? Do
Yeah.
we need to do some sort of motion to reconsider the resolution that was voted down so that we then have something to amend?
What we would be doing now would be a new motion for the resolution 2024-608 amended to insert a provision, and this is why nobody likes drafting a resolution on the fly, especially something that's this that's been something that is a bond council resolution. But I would say that we would amend it in the way that requires staff to not issue bonds, but rather come back and discuss if the bonds are, if the interest rate is over whatever percent is agreed to, if it's prime plus blank or 7.5 or whatever. That's what we would be. It would be a whole new motion because the other motion failed. So you're right, we don't have something to amend. It would be moving a new motion for this resolution as written with an addition in whatever section we come up with. We will probably want to write it with bond counsel. I don't want to write it on the fly. I'm not sure it would be legal.
Okay, so we're not going to do a new amendment on the fly. We do need to move on to our other items.
I want to suggest that the board consider doing an amended version and checking with bond counsel because timing, you guys, is really important to keep the capital program going. A month or two of delay will cost us a lot of money and people will be less safe for longer. I urge you to stick with this. If we do an amendment, we can run it by bond counsel. If it's problematic, we won't move forward without coming back to you. I urge you guys to keep at this until we can get this done. Thank you.
I just need some clarification on some of the statements that Jim said. One, is bond counsel Piper Sandler?
No, there are financial advisors. I'm going to forget the name. It's Golgan. She's been doing it.
Bond counsel are lawyers that do this. They're specially certified, and it's K&L Gates.
Then when you said we can't start capital construction without this money, I understood that capital construction would be dependent on a number of other things. And in some of the documents that went out on the measure, it said 2025, 26. Am I misunderstanding what's going to be held up that won't make us safe?
All of the capital construction work associated with the bond. What you're voting on is allowing us to access the debt to fund the program. The voters adopted the ability, the authority for you to issue that debt. We now need to pay people.
But what date is used as when it will start? When the capital construction will start? When we get the money? And if we don't get the money for 2 years or 6 months, I don't understand that statement.
We have planned work to fund beginning as soon as we get this cash, which currently is September. Every day we don't have authorization is a day we can't begin that work.
And it takes a while to get that done. So
that's Mary Helen, there's plenty of things that have to happen before we have a shovel in the ground. We have to do planning work.
Okay. and he's saying September, which is only a month and a half away.
But
So
what
where
I'm-
can I read what?
Wait, every day we wait pushes our start date out a day. So
I
that's
don't
what I'm
want to
trying
take the blame
communicate.
for, I don't want to be blamed for not
I'm not
starting
trying
making
to-
people unsafe. That's
I'm
what
not
it
trying
sounds
to
like.
blame you, but this vote results in a delay of our ability to move ahead with the capital program. There is
And
no
it was a delay in getting it to us. So I just want to make sure
I'm not-
that that the board is not put in a position of not taking actions that will make people unsafe. And I'm asking what those actions are that's so unsafe right now today.
Our system is not certified. Our system has weak spots. We don't have backup power. Our pumps are aging. Our channels are clogged. We have lots of capital work that we've identified for you, and all of it depends on having the cash to move forward. By delaying the vote today or our ability to begin working on issue debt, you're delaying our ability to move forward with the capital program. That's not a threat. It's not a crisis. It's just reality. It may not result in any harm.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes, 16 minutes left in our meeting. We have 2 more things to vote on. Emerald.
Nancy, you
very-
skipped me.
Excuse me? Oh, I think it was to Eric. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay,
You're
Eric.
before me. Yep.
So the big print giveth and the little print taketh away. We really need to see what the terms and conditions are. For example, if we issue today at 200 basis points higher than 20-year AA debt, are we allowed in future periods to pay that off sooner and reissue debt? So under the
Yes.
terms and conditions, which we haven't seen, we don't know if there's a prepayment penalty. And I'm asking you to think about this in terms of your fiduciary responsibilities as board members. We really need to know what we're voting on. And what we have right now is a proposal that is 200 basis points higher than 20-year debt. And we need to recognize that we have the ability to send out an RFP and get the most likely response. I need to see the terms and conditions.
Okay, you've made that point. Emerald.
I believe that this discussion represents a kind of a fundamental concern about how we're operating. Okay, so I agree with that I have a paramount concern in delaying the capital program, not just because of the nature of the work and how critical it is, but because every ounce of delay with projects at this scale cause the projects to become just inevitably more expensive. So I would urge this board to find a path forward today. I think it would be fine to direct the staff to take the lowest rate offered and come back to us and help us understand what that is. I do think that that is an unnecessary administrative burden, but I would be willing to support that if that would help this group get there today. But I do think that we need to keep the urgency in mind around getting the work done and getting it started. Thank you.
Eric Mueller.
Madam Chair, I think I could make a motion with an adjustment that may thread the needle. So if I may,
Please do.
I would move to approve again, Resolution 2024-0608, a resolution authorizing the sale of general obligation bonds and related matters with the amendment to page 2, item B. Item B currently reads, establish the form, principal amount, maturity schedule, interest rate, and other terms of the bond. I would insert interest rate not to exceed 7.5%. If that then helps provide that cap that staff is not going to go out and issue 12% bonds. And so if they get bids from somebody less than that, then it's under the cap. So
Eric, just a question to clarify. I so appreciate your willingness to get into the weeds here. Why 7.5? Why pick this arbitrary number? Why not just direct them to take the lowest possible rate? We need to move forward regardless.
I agree we need to move forward. I was trying to address,
Right.
it was a suggestion someone else had made.
Totally get it. I totally get
about
it.
a rate. And so
Yep.
if it's not to exceed, certainly we want them to take the lowest. And I believe that's the representation staff has made all along, and that the financial advisors would advise. And so if we get 6.2, I'm sure that's what they will come back. This was
I got it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're just trying to identify a threshold. Can we see just a temperature check on who could get there with the concept of directing the staff to go with the lowest possible rate and to come back to the board with a report as to why that is so?
Is there any reason we can't involve the budget committee in this?
I'm sorry, Mary Helen, I just asked a question. I'd love to get an answer from my colleagues on the board first.
I apologize.
Thank you.
They're the experts.
So temperature check. From the people who voted no before, would any be willing to move forward with a 7.5 threshold?
So I can offer another path there if it's acceptable to Eric Mueller. We have the ability to move into executive session with our financial counsel so that we can go through the details of this, come out of it, and then vote to go forward. But that would require us to have our financial consultants available to answer detailed questions on this. And an executive session may be the best way to handle it. And that would be because when we have negotiations, we can move into executive session for private discussions about those negotiations, and therefore have the ability to get the full range of support for this.
Allison, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking at the public meetings. This is not about a negotiation, so it's
a negotiation with the bank.
I don't believe that the public records exemption, it talks about negotiations for real estate transactions. I think that we could have it in open session. I don't think there's anything that is confidential here. We don't have Piper Jaffray or bond counsel here, so I'm not sure whether or not it's moot, because we're not going to move in unless you're talking about moving into executive session to discuss with our CFO, Lori. Which I think we can just do right here. But if you're talking about talking to our financial analysts, they're not here at the moment.
I understand. So this would be a special meeting that we would have to ensure that it moves forward.
Right.
If I could just clarify though, like with any RFP, it's the board's job to act on a high level and authorize, for example, an RFP going out. The board itself does not get into details of staff purview, such as what an interest rate on a bond is going to be. The board doesn't do that.
Okay, so this may be a difference between state and private businesses, but until as treasurer of CSX, until I got the signature from the board, there wasn't a deal done, and that had to have the final contract. So
right, I get that, and I hear you. It's very different. The public issuance of bonds is very different. We go and we've never been to a meeting with the ratings agency, for example, that had any council members there. It was staff and our Piper Jaffray folks negotiating and presenting, and then we get a rating and we pick the best one.
And that's also my experience too. So we are running out of time here. Eric proposed, I think that was a motion. Was it, Eric?
It was a motion for the, to adopt the resolution as previously stated and inserting interest rate not to exceed 7.5%. That, as far as I could tell, it failed for lack of a second, but.
Right, is there any second to that?
I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay, please call the vote. I think we've had a lot of discussion. Wendy, would you call the
Just to be
vote,
clear with
please?
everyone, so there's no surprises, this is a vote on the amendment, not on adoption of the final deal.
No,
No,
Okay, let's be clear.
Actually, no,
Okay.
no. The first motion for the resolution as written failed. Now we are back with a new motion for the resolution with an additional sentence that was described under 3B with interest rate not to exceed 7.5%. So it's a motion for the passage of this resolution with that different clause.
Eric Mueller,
aye.
Dave Ripma,
Yes.
Seth Reeser,
Yes.
Emerald Bogue, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Emerald.
I don't know. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Corky Collier,
Aye.
Rochelle Altman,
Yes.
Mary Helen Kincaid,
I'm gonna abstain.
Tanny Stephenson,
No.
Eric Molander,
Abstain.
Jason Dumont,
Aye.
Ed Washington,
Aye.
Nancy Hendrickson.
Yes.
There are 9 yeses.
So I thank you for working through this. We have also accepted a risk that we may be delaying the capital program. So we will wait with bated breath to make sure that we're able to get the debt. Otherwise, we'll have to vote on another resolution.
Can I present an additional amendment to this? That if it is not this, then if not 7.5%, they come back. I would like to find a path that allows us to move forward. Is there a piggyback amendment that we could come up with that allows the staff to move forward? If it is 7.5 or above and move forward quickly. What are we going to do if it comes back at 7.6?
Exactly.
Usually
So
that
I
might
think
be
the
we-
difficult,
lowest
but I think that's
possible.
a great idea.
Well, so Emerald, what I would do is if conditions change, and this is based upon my experience as a corporate treasurer, I would come back to my board and say, I'm going to offer a different kind of instrument that would meet the requirements for term, interest rate, and terms and conditions. Pretty straightforward. We can issue a different kind of debt.
So let's see. So Emerald, I think if we were to do something like that, it's a new motion because this motion passed. So think about that for a moment.
I will think about that for a moment. I'm wondering if anyone else is interested in this or if this just feels like unnecessary at this stage. I'm very concerned about further delay of the capital program for no net gain.
And I just don't know what kind of bids we're gonna get, folks. I
Yep.
really don't know.
It's a real risk.
So
And
It
it
is.
doesn't
So
feel
we
responsible.
could-
It really
we could
doesn't.
act-
It feels very arbitrary.
I think Emerald's suggestion is a sound one.
Okay, all we need is language. Seth,
Would you be comfortable if we reported back to the chair and vice chairs and got their approval or something like that?
Yes, that would
Could-
work. That would work well.
Again,
I just,
trying
I
to
would, I
brainstorm here,
want
not
an
trying to
expedient path.
I'm gonna say I like the idea. I think that what we pass now gives staff the ability to move forward and not delay. And then at the next meeting, we can work to address some of the concerns that everyone has and maybe come up with something a little more fine-tuned and usable. But I think this gets, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, you and Lori can move forward now, getting the money. if we need to change in 2 weeks, this isn't going to delay that.
And maybe we can talk with our bond counsel and financial advisors and bring them in to answer some additional questions for y'all and so on, which again, we're perfectly happy to do.
I would love to just have a plan B in mind so that we can move quickly. Thank you.
I'm hearing direction from this board to me to work with staff to come back with a proposal to address a contingency if the rate comes back higher than 7.5% and to present that to you at your July meeting.
That's great. Thank you. And do we need to have a meeting before July? Do we even need to have an earlier meeting? How are we doing in the timeline?
I don't
Because
think
we also,
we won't have bids by that time, so that should
Okay.
provide additional time. I would like to confirm that, but I believe that to be true.
okay, 2 meaty topics for July. I want to point out we have 2 minutes and we have 2 votes. These votes are mainly housekeeping measures. So
My
first
calendar has
question.
us till 3, just saying, but
I know, but this is when our meeting is noticed too. So trying to stay on board here, on track here. Do we need to pass these 2 before June 30th? I get a yes from Lori.
Yes.
Okay, Eric, hit it.
Madam Chair, I would move adoption of resolution 2024-0609, a resolution accepting the assignment of the Columbia Corridor Drainage District's Joint Contracting Authority contracts. Page 176 of the packet.
Do we have a second? This is largely a housekeeping measure. We need
So
to move
moved.
from one to another.
Seconded.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Call the vote, please.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a request of
Yes.
the staff. So Lori, could you do me a favor and with each of the contractors that we're accepting, would you just send me a quick spreadsheet that has the outstanding amount yet to be spent on these?
So the reason that information was not included in the packet is because we don't have all of the invoices in for the year. So the amount that transfers is going to be what's remaining after the end of the year. So we haven't hit
And
that point yet.
And that can take like a month or so after the end of the year. So, but when that is available, can you send that?
It will be included in your packet as part of all of the new contract information. We want to be transparent to our board. We will be providing all of the contracts that transferred. We chose to bring this resolution to the board because there's a little bit of a gray area. JCA is not a drainage district and wasn't specifically mentioned in the legislation as far as the transfer of the districts, because JCA just goes away at the end of June because of the end of the funding stream. So I chose to bring this resolution forward to you so that you would be aware of and make the decision to transfer these contracts. These are all contracts that are being used for PMLS work, pretty critical work going on with all of these contracts. Colin can speak to some of the work that's being done as well as Bill if you're interested in hearing that, but we won't know the carry forward amounts until we get through the year and know what was spent on JCA.
Okay, and I'm going to have to.
As Rochelle pointed out, the spending through May 31st is in your packet on each of those contracts. So I know it's not totally up to date.
Right, so it's as close as we can get it. So that information is there. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to push for a vote. Please vote. Please, Wendy.
Eric Mueller.
Aye.
Dave Ripma.
Yes.
Seth Reeser.
Yes.
Emerald Bogue.
Yes.
Corky Collier.
Aye.
Rochelle Altman.
Aye.
Mary Helen Kincaid.
I'm going to vote to abstain because I received legal counsel from an outside lawyer that there's 2 kinds of contracts and that I could be held liable for these. So I'm abstaining.
Hanny Stephenson.
Yes.
Eric Molander.
Yes.
Jason Dumont.
Yes.
Ed Washington.
Aye.
Nancy Hendrickson.
Yes.
There are 12 yeses. I think I'm counting wrong though. 12 yeses.
Thank you. Motion passes. On the next one, Jim, do we need to do this one by June 30th? Do we need a meeting for this? Can't hear you. You're on mute.
It's important work. We'd love to move forward. It's an extension of existing work. Carrie's done a great job putting together all the detail. This is really consistent with other contracts we'd ask you guys to approve. Again, it's a contract. It doesn't commit to spending. You've got adequate budget that you've approved, adopted, and everything else. This really helps us manage the system. We'd really appreciate you approving it. It is standard business practice. It's the same thing we've been doing for 117 years.
Okay. Eric Mueller, thank you.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to negotiate and sign 2 contracts for on-call environmental services with GSI Water Solutions and Geoengineers, Inc., each with a maximum contract value of $700,000 for a term of 5 years. The motion is on page 181.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. I think Jim outlined it pretty clearly. I'll also note that in my work, I do environmental work. I have done a bunch of these, and they are a very smart and efficient way to do business. Any other discussion?
As the maker of the motion, I would just point out, this is just authorizing on-call services. It's not spending any of this. This is just making it the services available should the need come up during the course of the construction. We could spend a nickel or something greater, but there's no guarantee that we have to spend X dollars.
And the only dollars we can spend have to be in the approved budget.
Okay. So with that, Wendy, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Eric Mueller,
Aye.
Dave Ripma,
Yes.
Seth Reeser,
Yes.
Emerald Bogue,
Yes.
Corky Collier,
Aye.
Rochelle Altman,
Aye.
Mary Helen Kincaid,
Yes.
Tanny Stephenson,
Yes.
Eric Molander,
Aye.
Jason Dumont,
Aye.
Ed Washington,
Aye.
Nancy Hendrickson.
I also vote yes. I think that was unanimous. Good job, everyone. So the motion passes. This is our business for today. Thank you for staying over 6 minutes. And by the time I get done talking, it'll be probably 7. But thank you so much for getting through this work. We still have work to do, lots of work to do over the next 6 months before the new board gets on board. And so I'll encourage everyone to make sure to show up, to vote your conscience, and we'll do the best for our new urban district as it begins on July 1st. With that,
Nancy, can I take 1 minute? Congratulations on retiring the end of the month, but she's going to stay on and help us get through this process. And I want to tell her, welcome to the land of retirement, where you're going to be busier than you have been for the past however many years you worked at the city. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you all through December. So Jim, any
Right.
last closing remarks?
Yeah. Thank you to those who are anxious to move forward. Thank you for those who are working hard to ensure we spend money wisely. It is the combination of these views that results in a great outcome for the community. I appreciate you all. Thank you for sticking with it today and leaning in with your views. I think as a result, we'll end up with a stronger product. So I'm grateful to all of you for your time and energy.
All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thanks again, everyone.